Welcome to another episode of Crime Box Stories, where we uncover the most shocking and mysterious criminal cases. Today, we bring you a story that shook the quiet town of Lakeville, Ohio. At first glance, this place seemed perfect. Cozy homes, well-kept lawns, and family dinners in the evenings. But behind the facade of prosperity, dark secrets were hidden, leading to a tragedy that would have the entire town talking. In this town lived Michael Harris, a 45-year-old owner of a successful auto repair shop, along with his wife Jennifer and her daughter from a previous marriage, 18-year-old Amanda. Michael was well respected by the locals, and his shop was known for its honesty and quality work. Many entrusted him with their vehicles, knowing that the job would be done right. His wife Jennifer worked as an elementary school teacher in the local school. She was known as a kind and compassionate woman, always willing to help others. Many parents highly valued her caring attitude towards their children, considering her one of the best teachers in the district. Jennifer always saw herself as a fortunate woman. Her first marriage had been difficult, and for a long time she didn't believe she could ever find true love again. But meeting Michael changed her life. He was kind, reliable, and attentive, everything she had been missing in the past. They got married 5 years ago, and Jennifer genuinely believed their union was unbreakable. Her home was once again filled with joy and laughter, and the future seemed bright. Amanda, Jennifer's daughter from her first marriage, was a complicated teenager. After her parents' divorce, she struggled to come to terms with the new reality. When her mother remarried, Amanda didn't immediately accept Michael. It was hard for her to trust adults, especially after her own father had left the family. But over time, she began to get used to Michael. He seemed reliable and stable, something like the father she never had. They weren't close, but their relationship was respectful. Amanda had just graduated from high school with honors. Her parents were proud of her. Jennifer always supported her daughter in all her endeavors, whether it was her interest in art or her desire to pursue photography. Michael was happy for her too, though he didn't fully understand her passions. He was a practical man who preferred tangible things rather than abstract ideas. But he always tried to support Amanda, seeing how hard she worked to achieve her dreams. At first glance, the Harris family lived the life every American family dreams of: a cozy home, stable jobs, and shared plans for the future. But behind the facade of prosperity, tension and hidden emotions were lurking, gradually surfacing. Jennifer began to notice strange behavior in both Michael and Amanda. Sometimes she caught her husband's gaze on her, and it felt more evaluative than loving. But she dismissed these thoughts, chalking them up to her imagination. After all, they were a family, and such ideas seemed absurd to her. However, the tension in the house kept building. What started as a barely perceptible feeling gradually became more and more obvious. Jennifer couldn't quite put her finger on what had changed, but her intuition told her something was off. She attributed it to the stress of preparing Amanda for college and Michael's demanding job. Family life always required effort, and Jennifer believed these were just temporary difficulties they could overcome. Over time, Jennifer increasingly noticed that Michael and Amanda were starting to avoid her presence. They spent more time together when she was busy at work or out on errands. At times, it seemed to her that their interactions went beyond the usual relationship between a stepfather and stepdaughter. But she kept reassuring herself that it was just her imagination, pushing away the unpleasant thoughts. In Lakeville, no one could have guessed what was hidden behind the facade of the perfect family. The Harris neighbors saw them as an exemplary couple, a model to follow. No one could have predicted that the family bonds, which seemed so strong, were about to collapse like a house of cards. Ahead of them was a series of events that would forever change their lives and turn peaceful Lakeville into the site of one of the most shocking crimes in the town's history. It all started with innocent conversations that, at first glance, seemed like an ordinary exchange of words between a stepfather and stepdaughter. When Jennifer was busy at work, Michael and Amanda would stay home alone. At first, they talked about school, future plans, and her passion for photography and art. Michael tried to support her interests, even if he didn't always understand their depth. At some point, these conversations became more personal. Amanda began to share her doubts and concerns that she didn't dare discuss with her mother. Michael became not just a stepfather to her, but someone she could trust. Gradually, their relationship crossed the line of ordinary family ties. Unbeknownst to both of them, they started feeling something more than just affection for each other. Michael, who increasingly felt estranged from Jennifer, began seeking comfort in the company of the young girl. He felt that each day he was drifting further away from his wife. Their marriage, which once seemed strong, began to crumble under the pressure of daily routine and exhaustion. Amanda, on the other hand, was charmed by the attention of an older man, who had always seemed to her a model of reliability and confidence. She saw in Michael not only a stepfather, but a man who understood and listened to her. One day, when they were alone at home, the conversation turned to more personal matters. Michael began to share his disappointments in his marriage with Jennifer, telling Amanda how lonely he felt. Amanda listened sympathetically, trying to understand why her mother, who had always seemed so strong and reliable, couldn't support her husband. Michael, in turn, began to see Amanda not just as a stepdaughter, but as a woman who could understand and support him in difficult times. Their relationship began to intensify, and soon the innocent conversations evolved into something more. Their affair developed rapidly. The initial sense of guilt gradually faded into the background, giving way to passion and new sensations. They hid their relationship from Jennifer, although the tension in the house grew with each passing day. Michael began finding more and more excuses to be alone with Amanda. They exchanged glances full of hidden meaning and tried not to attract Jennifer's attention, who remained unaware. Soon, Michael gave Amanda a gold bracelet, a symbol of their secret connection. This gift became a token of their relationship, which she wore while hiding it from her mother. Every time Jennifer left for work or was delayed, Michael and Amanda spent time together. They met in secluded places, away from the prying eyes of neighbors and acquaintances. They were cautious, but anxiety was growing inside each of them. Amanda became increasingly aware that these relationships contradicted all the moral principles she had ever known. She tried to justify her actions, convincing herself that it was love. But with each passing day, the guilt grew stronger. Michael, for his part, felt confused. On the one hand, he understood that these relationships were unacceptable and could destroy everything he had built. On the other hand, he couldn't resist what he felt for Amanda. Every time she tried to distance herself, he found words to convince her to stay. He told her that their love was real, that they would find a way to be together despite all the obstacles. But deep down, Michael knew that their affair was a path to nowhere, one that would eventually lead them to disaster. The sense of anxiety increasingly seeped into Amanda's daily life. She became withdrawn, and her mood swings became more extreme. Jennifer began to notice that something was happening with her daughter, but she couldn't understand what it was. She tried to talk to Amanda, but Amanda avoided answers, blaming it on fatigue or stress about college applications. Jennifer attributed the changes in her daughter's behavior to teenage difficulties, not suspecting that the real reason was far more serious. On the other hand, Michael's behavior also began to raise questions for Jennifer. He became more nervous and irritable, sometimes avoiding communication with her, Jennifer tried to talk to him, but Michael assured her that everything was fine, that it was just work-related stress. But even his explanations couldn't calm her inner anxiety. She began to suspect that her husband was hiding something, but she could never have connected it to Amanda. One day, coming home earlier than usual, Jennifer caught Michael and Amanda in a moment that shattered her world. They were too close, too intimate, and in that instant, everything fell into place. Shock pierced her heart, and she felt her entire life collapse in one moment. Michael and Amanda froze, realizing that their secret had been uncovered. Jennifer, unable to believe her eyes, screamed at them, demanding explanations. But neither of them could find the words to justify themselves. In a fit of rage and despair, Jennifer threw Michael and Amanda out of the house, screaming that she never wanted to see them again. Her world, which had seemed so stable, had collapsed in an instant. She didn't know how to deal with this betrayal or how to move on. Her mind was clouded with anger and pain, and she couldn't think of anything else but how her trust had been destroyed. Michael tried to explain himself, but Jennifer didn't want to hear any of it. She was determined to put an end to this nightmare, unaware that even darker events awaited her ahead. Amanda, on the other hand, was devastated that her actions had led to the destruction of the family. She tried to find a way out of the situation, but every step she took only made things worse. Darkness awaited them all, far beyond anything they could have imagined. The day began as usual. Jennifer woke up early in the morning, made breakfast, and headed to work. Lately, she had increasingly felt that something had changed in her family. Amanda had become more withdrawn, spending more time in her room and avoiding honest conversations. Michael, for his part, was acting strange too, nervous and irritable. He often came home later than usual, explaining it as extra work at the auto shop. Jennifer tried to convince herself that these were just temporary difficulties caused by her own exhaustion and worries about her daughter's future, as Amanda was about to leave for college, but the unsettling feeling wouldn't go away. More and more often, she caught herself thinking that Michael and Amanda were starting to avoid her. They talked less in her presence, and when she asked questions, they answered briefly, as if hiding something important. What worried her most was that Michael and Amanda were spending a lot of time together when she wasn't home. Jennifer reassured herself that this was normal, after all. Michael was a support for Amanda during this challenging period of growing up, but one day, that world of illusions crumbled. That day, Jennifer came home earlier than usual. She felt tired and decided to take a few hours off instead of staying late at work. As soon as she opened the door, she sensed a strange atmosphere, a tense silence that usually accompanies something happening that no one wants to be discovered. She heard muffled voices coming from Amanda's room and moved closer. Her heart started pounding faster. Instinctively, she knew she was about to witness something terrible. The door to Amanda's room was slightly ajar. Jennifer carefully peeked inside and froze. What she saw was unforgettable. Michael and Amanda were sitting too close to each other, their postures and looks leaving no doubt. There was more between them than just a stepfather-stepdaughter relationship. That moment shattered Jennifer's entire life. She felt everything she believed in falling apart. Tears blurred her vision, but she quickly pulled herself together. Jennifer burst into the room, shouting, "What's going on here?" Her voice was filled with anger and pain. Michael and Amanda froze, realizing their secret had been uncovered. A heavy silence hung in the room, broken only by Jennifer's rapid breathing. She stood before them, trying to comprehend the scale of the betrayal. Her mind refused to accept what she had just seen. This couldn't be true. It couldn't be reality. That her husband, the man she trusted, and her daughter, whom she loved more than anything, had betrayed her so cruelly. How could you? How could you do this to me?" Her voice broke into a scream. She looked at Michael, expecting an explanation, but his eyes were full of fear and shame. He couldn't find the words to justify himself. Amanda, pale and trembling, was silent too. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she didn't dare meet her mother's gaze. That moment seemed to stretch on forever. Jennifer felt her rage building. She couldn't stay in this house any longer, in this place that had witnessed the destruction of her life. "Get out, both of you. I never want to see you again," she screamed, her voice trembling with despair and anger. She threw them both out of the house, as if hoping that would rid her of the pain. But the pain didn't go away. It only grew stronger. Michael tried to say something, but his words were lost in the flood of her screams. Slowly, he walked toward the door, realizing that any explanation would be pointless now. Amanda was crying, but Jennifer couldn't allow herself to feel pity. She no longer saw the daughter she had always been proud of. She saw a traitor who had destroyed her family. When Michael and Amanda left, the house fell into a suffocating silence. Jennifer was left alone. Her thoughts swung between despair, anger, and complete confusion about what to do next. She could no longer trust either her husband or her daughter. Her heart was breaking from the pain, and she didn't know how to handle it. Several days passed, but nothing improved. Jennifer filed for divorce, no longer wanting to see Michael. Amanda went to stay with a friend, avoiding her mother and trying to deal with what had happened. Jennifer was left alone in a house that had once been filled with joy and warmth. Her life had fallen apart, and she didn't know how to pick up the pieces. Jennifer tried to distract herself, but her thoughts kept returning to that day when she came home earlier than usual. She couldn't forget the moment her world collapsed. Every time she closed her eyes, images of Michael and Amanda appeared before her. Jennifer felt her anger growing into something more, a desire for revenge, a need to retaliate for her ruined life. She could no longer be the woman she once was. Now, darkness had consumed her, and ahead lay events that would forever change her fate. Several weeks had passed since that fateful evening when Jennifer had thrown Michael and Amanda out of the house. In Lakeville, people were still talking about the strange and tragic story. The small town, where everyone knew each other, couldn't stop speculating and spreading rumors. Neighbors cast cautious glances at the Harris house, noticing how its once well-kept exterior was starting to gather dust and fall into neglect. Jennifer barely left the house, avoiding the neighbors and cutting off all social contact. She was trying to cope with the pain and betrayal that had shattered her life. Her days had become a blur. Jennifer lived on autopilot, waking up, preparing meals, doing household chores, all of it done mechanically, without any sense of reality. The pain of betrayal was eating away at her from the inside, and she couldn't escape the obsessive thoughts about what had happened. At night, she was haunted by nightmares in which she constantly saw Michael and Amanda. In her dreams, they laughed at her, slipping away each time she tried to get close. Her screams echoed through the empty house, but no one could hear them. One evening, as Jennifer sat on the couch, hugging herself as if trying to shield herself from reality, there was a knock at the door. The unexpected sound jolted her back to the present. She slowly got up and approached the door, unsure of who could be visiting at such a late hour. Standing on the doorstep were two police officers. Their faces were serious, and there was something grim in their eyes. "Mrs. Harris," one of them began, taking out a notepad, "we're here to inform you that something terrible has happened." Jennifer's heart clenched. She stood in the doorway, unable to speak, but deep down, she already knew she was about to hear something dreadful. "Your daughter, Amanda, has been found dead," the second officer said, his voice calm but laced with sympathy. "She was murdered in her apartment. We are conducting an investigation and have already begun searching for possible suspects." Jennifer felt the world collapse beneath her once again. Her head spun, and she grabbed onto the doorframe to keep from falling. Her ears rang, and the police officer's words seemed like distant echoes. "Amanda is dead." Those words wouldn't settle in her mind. All she could feel in that moment was a deep emptiness and fear. It seemed as if life had left her no chance for relief. The police continued speaking, but Jennifer could no longer hear them. She sank into her thoughts, trying to grasp how this could have happened. Her daughter, her Amanda, had been murdered. But who could have done this? And why? Questions flooded her mind, but there were no answers. After a brief conversation, the officers left, leaving Jennifer alone in her dark house. She stood by the door for a long time, unable to move. Her mind couldn't accept this reality, and she desperately tried to find some explanation for everything that had happened, but there were no explanations. A few days later, when Jennifer had somewhat regained her composure, the police returned with new details. They informed her that the primary suspect in Amanda's murder was Michael. According to the investigators, his fingerprints were found at the crime scene, and witnesses had seen him near Amanda's apartment on the night of the murder. This was yet another wave of shock for Jennifer. Her ex-husband, the man she had once trusted, was now suspected of murdering her daughter. The police told her that Michael had disappeared after the incident, and they had begun searching for him. Jennifer couldn't believe that Michael was capable of such a thing. She knew that his relationship with Amanda had been wrong, but murder? That seemed unimaginable to her. Yet all the evidence pointed to him. Soon, the police found Michael. He had been hiding with an old friend on the outskirts of town. When they arrested him, he looked exhausted and broken. But what shocked everyone most was his reaction. Michael didn't resist arrest and didn't deny his guilt. He silently followed the officers, his eyes empty, like those of a man who had lost all hope. When Jennifer learned of Michael's arrest, she experienced a strange mixture of emotions. On one hand, it pained her to realize that the man she had once loved could have committed such a horrific crime. On the other hand, she felt a strange sense of relief. Perhaps now, this nightmare chapter of her life would finally come to a close, but each time she thought about it, she was overwhelmed by emptiness. Everything she had known and loved was gone. All that remained was to wait for the full truth to finally come to light. Jennifer met with the police several times, trying to understand what could have driven Michael to such an act. The investigators told her that they believed Michael had killed Amanda in a fit of rage, unable to handle the strain of their secret relationship and the fear of being exposed. That moment had apparently been the final straw, breaking him emotionally. But Jennifer still couldn't find answers to all of her questions. Her thoughts constantly returned to the night she had discovered them together. Perhaps something had broken in Michael then, and he could no longer control his emotions. Or maybe their relationship had been doomed from the start, and tragedy was inevitable. She didn't know, and perhaps she would never know the whole truth. The story of how a husband's affair with his stepdaughter led to a horrific murder shocked the entire town of Lakeville, leaving an indelible mark on the lives of its residents. Now the town lived under the shadow of this tragedy, which had become a symbol of destruction and betrayal. Thank you for staying until the end. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new stories about the most shocking crimes that everyone should know about. Remember, the truth will always find its way, even if that way is paved with blood and tears. See you in the next video.